Good evening and salutations, my J friends. Man, was this an episode, right? Hmm. I had these 3 points, these three stories that I want to sit there and start off with first. And I guess I can go in any order because really all of them are just points that we're gonna sit there and talk about tonight. And I think I'll go with Lulu, Brooklyn, and Maxie. The thing about Lulu's the type of person that will sit there and test your patience. She is a very mouthy chick, okay? She is one of those type of women that the only way to sit there and deal with her when she gets so damn self-righteous is to find a way to shut her trap. And Brooklyn definitely found a way to shut this woman's trap today, right? Because she takes no accountability. She is just like, oh, well, this is your fault, and I didn't do anything, and I had the right to sit there. She's the type of person, in a way, you could sit there and say maybe 30 or 40 years, well, 30 years or whatever, she'll be known as a Karen, right? Well, I said what I said, and I had the right to sit there and say, I didn't do anything wrong, and this isn't my fault, and this is your fault. And she's the type of person that just keeps going and going and going and going and going. And Maxie tells her after she gets popped in her mouth, because that was the only way to silence this chick. Maxie was like, listen, you got to own what you did, because I get it. You don't like her, she don't like you, the world's going to keep on spinning. But the thing is, you hurt her child. You did it in the worst possible way, and you need to own it. And yeah, she does walk up to Gio. She apologizes to him for hurting him. But, you know, the the thing is with Lulu is that I think if it was anybody else that she did this to, she would give a genuine apology. She would give a genuine apology, and I don't honestly think that she would win as far with this whole thing. She wouldn't win as far. She would have sat there and be like, you know what, listen, this isn't my business or whatever. Maybe I shouldn't sit there and say anything. And she would have probably struggled with it. And I don't know, maybe she would have or maybe she wouldn't have. But I like to sit there and give her the benefit of the doubt and think that she wouldn't have did what she did. But because she doesn't like Brooklyn so much, she justifies it. She takes no accountability for her part in any of it. And I think that's probably the most frustrating part about watching Lulu these 3 days so far. I felt like she's been on that whole, well, I didn't do anything wrong, and da 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 da. I felt like she's really been on that for 3 days. And again, she's the type of woman that has to be popped in the mouth before she's like, oh, yeah, now you woke up. Now you realize what you did, right? Good. We had to sit there and listen to it for like a good 20 seconds. So, shout out to Brooklyn for that. Brooklyn has some sort of revenge scheme, and at first I thought it was going to be like, okay, I'm just going to sit there and sue you. But whatever this, whatever this thing is, it involves Brit. She asked Marco to sit there and look up some sort of papers pertaining to Brit. Now I could have swore, and granted, I wasn't watching it back then. There was a period I took off, but what happened? Brit was had Lulu's eggs or whatever, and gave birth to Rocco or something. Called him Ben, which was a much better name than Rocco. But I don't know. There's that. Now there's Chase and Dante. Anna pretty much kind of locks him in a cell and is like, "Hey, listen, um, y'all gonna hash this shit out." Chase, I'm not gonna lie, he was on point about some things. He was definitely out of pocket about other things. And I'm gonna be honest, I didn't even like his attitude. I didn't like his attitude from get go. The way he was looking at Dante, I was like, bro, you do realize that he does have legitimate reasons of why he's upset with you. Like, he looked like he was ready to sit there and throw hands. I'm like, bro, like seriously. And they get into it, right? Anna leaves. They get into it. And he's still in the whole, listen, I didn't lie to you to lie to you. I didn't do it out of malice. I did it because my wife asked me to, and I wanted to sit there and respect her. And Dante at one point did sit there and say, listen, I get it, as your wife or whatever. And so I can understand you doing that for your wife. And he was like, well, I just wish you would encourage her to tell the truth. Now he just backtracks today. He's like, no, you should have sat there and told me the truth. I'm like, was this like not the same? Like, when did that go out the window? Anyway, the point is, he still is on that. And then there's one point where, he says that Brooklyn did him a favor because you weren't ready for diaper duty back then. You were a wild child, bro. That's out of pocket. That is so out of goddamn pocket. Because Dante said what I've been sitting there saying for a hot minute, and the reason why I was not liking Brooklyn because you took the choice from him. You made that choice unilaterally, and that's something that I can't get over. I can't. I will not get past that shit. Yes, I understand the circumstances. I understand that she was young. I get it. I get what Chase Smith is saying. If she would have sat there and told the truth, then the choice of her raising that baby would have been out of her hands in a sense. And she didn't want to do that. So I get the steps, the logical steps of why she did what she did. But I damn sure still don't support that shit in a sense. Um, just on a side note, I saw one person that made this idiotic comment about, I don't know, it's a woman's body and it's her choice to sit there and, it's her choice and how she handles it. And I'm like, I just want to sit there and say, because this isn't the first time that I've seen that comment. I want to make this very, 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 very clear because I do not like sitting there repeating myself. This isn't a case of abortion or anything like that. Okay, this is not one of those cases where yes, I get that, I understand that point. Once that baby comes out, it's no longer a woman's body. Okay, it's only a woman's body when the baby's actually inside. I know most people understand that, but I've seen so far two goddamn dingbats that have said that in my comment section. So I'm like, let's just make sure that we're on the same page about that part. But yeah, he was out of pocket for saying that. And then Dante, when Chase is in there talking about why he doesn't have a relationship, a good relationship, or any relationship with Gio, because he went too hard on him. And he was like, even your own mom said that you went too hard. I'm like, yes, Chase does have a point. And then Dante was like, well, you wouldn't know because you're not a father. And at that point, he was like, okay, yeah, I definitely went too far. But, he does agree to sit there and still be partners with him. I can separate work from personal. Yeah, I don't know if that's the case, if you actually could do that. Like he did sit there and say, I got to be able to trust you. That's a very. I get, I get, I understand where Chase is coming from. And Chase was like, oh, well, you got to watch your mouth, how you talk to Brooklyn, or else what? He practically was like, you should be ashamed for you not sitting there telling me in your adult years. And on some level, he had a point. So, this whole, Chase kind of overreacting on that, like, that's the shit that kind of gets me a little angry in a sense, or a little whatever. It's like, you're not her goddamn attack dog. The same shit with Finn on The Bold and the Beautiful. And I understand devotion, but Um, Drew was going to sit there and tell Jason his proposal. But Jason, he wasn't. Jason literally said when you talked to Carly, I didn't even give him a chance. There was no proposal you're gonna sit there and give to Michael because you're a scumbag. And he points out like, you, we're not giving the kids back to Willow as long as you're in the picture because you're poison. And look what you did, Wiley. I'm like, Jason. I was like, he had a point. Even Drew knew he had a point because he felt bad for doing it. I mean, not bad enough to not do it, but he knew he was wrong for doing it. Right? So he didn't even get out what he was going to sit there and say. Instead, he didn't put his pride aside and be like, you know what? Let me just sit there and give up this proposal of let me back away from Willow. And this way, Willow can sit there and have custody or can see the kids. He didn't do that. He let his ego, his animosity towards Jason, get the best of him. And it's like you sit there and say that you love Willow, but is that really true? Because if that was true, you would have just followed through. You'd been like, whatever, Jason. I'm just gonna let that shit slide. I'm gonna do what's best for Willow and the kids. But clearly, they were not a priority. Now he does sit there. There's a point where he does make a comment about how he's gonna sit there and take the kids back from Michael. And Jason's like, no, that's not gonna happen. And Drew's like, you are always not there fighting for Carly's kids, fighting for Michael's kids, and yet you give so little priority towards your own kids. You know, he's like, Sam will be ashamed of you for you not sitting there following through with your promise of, looking out after the kids. Now, on some level, regardless if you like Drew or not, he has a point. Okay. Hell, there was one video I did where Steve does sit there and mention that Jason has been a deadbeat dad. Right. The one thing that I absolutely always found to be very trash of Jason is how he puts other people's kids above his own. Hell, he treats Michael better than he does his own damn son. Like, hell, where's Danny at? Remember the whole punishment and everything like that? Are you following through, or are you just too busy trying to clean up the parental mess and everything like that and protecting their kids and not sitting there watching out for your own? So, regardless of what you think about Drew, he does have a point. The problem is, if you're going to sit there and say that Sam should feel ashamed of Jason, then Sam should also feel ashamed of you for how you handled Scout and how you don't even bother to sit there and put Scout's needs ahead of your own. So we're not going to sit there and act like that's not a double-edged sword of what Drew said. Negotiations go nowhere. And then he calls up Martin and he's like, Martin, we're going to do everything we can to sit there and get those kids back. He actually says what he did was make a mistake by trying to do the right thing. And Martin has some sort of strategy that's going to be big and consequences and everything like that. And at this point, you don't care. Martin was with Tracy. And long story short, Tracy's like, I'll give back the name if he drops the charges. Martin's like, okay, we're going to add a caveat to that. So he wants her to sit there and do a press conference and say all these nice things and welcome back into the family and give him the family name, which I don't really understand why he is still begging to have that goddamn name, but whatever. Carly gives Brendan. What did he give her? It wasn't like a socket wrench. It was some sort of plumbing tool. And I'm like, I get why like the symbol behind the wrench or whatever it was. I think it's a wrench. But she wanted to sit there and thank him for Michael going to that clinic and everything like that, and everything that he did to get him there. I'm like, girl, you could have gave him damn near anything. I understand that Like the economy's tight, but you gave him a goddamn wrench. Like, and he thanks. He was like, "Oh, this is so special to me." I was like, "Nah." I was like, "I would have been okay with that." I'm like, are you are you serious? You gave him a goddamn wrench. Like, girl, you own half of a hotel, and you own a diner, and you gave that guy a goddamn. Let's just move on. Move on. Um, Emma is still determined to sit there and bring down Dalton, and Gio, is willing to help since Gio, since Emma wasn't there looking out for Gio. Um, Jocelyn realizes that there's nothing on the computer and needs to get the phone. So after Emma continues to flirt with Dalton, he leaves. He goes back to the office. Um, Jocelyn's able to sit there and get the phone from him because he puts it down. She puts the paper over it. Then he goes to the lab. And then he comes back, I guess because he realized there's a boot in his car or whatever, courtesy of Anna, and then he leaves. And part of it, I guess for me personally, is like I'm so attached to my phone, I can't imagine, like, if my phone is not by hand, it's in my goddamn pocket. Like, I don't understand how he just walked out and just totally forgot that shit, but okay. Um, Now, while she's upstairs, Brennan comes in. And you talk about Sonny and the second attack, the second assassin on Sonny's life, and they bring up, um, they bring up, they bring up Dalton, and she's like, "Did you look into Dalton for me?" And he's like, "Yeah, Dalton's above board. He's cool. Everything's all good in the hood. Whatever. Like, there's nothing to really look at." And he leaves, and she's like, "Liar." So she's like, "Okay, fine. You're not gonna look into Dalton. Let me do that shit myself." So that's why she was able to sit there and get the boot on Dalton's car, and Dalton came down there, and Anna was like, "Hey," to greet him. And I guess in a sense, Dalton's a little surprised. He's like, "Okay, I know I came in here to clear up this boot thing, but I didn't think I was going to be talking to the commissioner." And I feel like the commissioner is going to do whatever she has to do to get Dalton, to get to Dalton. If she has to flirt with him, Emma's already flirting with him, and I have a feeling that Jocelyn, if she has to, she's going to flirt with him too. Now, Emma goes back to the office. Well, Emma goes to Dawn's office. And while Jocelyn was able to sit there and get the stuff off the phone. Emma comes in there when Vaughn's there. So Vaughn decides to kiss Joss as, like, cover or distraction or whatever. It's like, how you going to sit and explain, like, her just holding that thumb drive or whatever. So that's how the romance is going to start. That's how it's going to start. Let's just hope that they give Vaughn a better story, or is a little bit more committed to him than they are with Dex, right? And I will sit there and say the reason why I like Vaughn, I don't usually do couple things, but the reason why I like Vaughn is because Vaughn will sit there and hold Jocelyn's feet to the fire. Dex is the guy who will literally sit there and be an informant on Sonny just to get Jocelyn's approval. So I like the fact that Vaughn doesn't rock like that. Yeah, unusual 19 minutes so far. God damn it, I feel like a little. Oh, look. Oh, and then I forgot, there's a point where Jason's that they're talking to Carly about his meeting with Drew. And long story short, Carly may sit there and be like, "Hey, listen, whatever." Well, Jason brought up the fact that Drew wants Willow to see the kids, and Carly's like, "Nope, not with him in the picture because she's been making some bad choices, and that's because of Drew." And oh, there's a point where Drew's not there talking to Jason, And Drew is not there telling Jason, or no, Martin. I think it's either Martin. I think it's, yeah, it was Martin that while everyone else sits there and think that Drew is bad for Willow, he's not there saying that he empowered her to not just roll over for the Correntos, for the Correntos and stuff like that. And I'm like, or maybe, yeah, he also said that. He also said that to Jason. I think he said that to Jason. Jason was like, "Are you serious? Like, bro, this is about you empowering her to fight for herself, to stand up for herself, and to not roll over. This is about, you know, was like, in reality, this is about the choices that you suggested to Willow, and Willow was dumb enough to sit there and follow, and that's why she lost her kids. So you are, I mean, delusion. No, I mean, I would sit there and think like, damn, Nina has been delusional back in the day, and in some ways she still is now. But when Nina is the voice of reason, and he's looking at his presence in Willow's life like it's a positive thing, like he influenced her to stand up for herself. I'm like, anyways, they're talking about Drew, and Gio overhears. So I wonder what Gio's gonna sit there and do, with that information. Now I feel like that's about it. It's been 20 something minutes. I wrote 3.5 goddamn pages, and I still feel like I didn't cover everything. But that is the general gist of the episode. Now, obviously, we're going to do a live stream tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We'll sit there and talk about, well, pretty much anything else that I didn't cover, as well as all the other 5 shows. And with that being said, I'm going to go. You know, I will say this much. And this is for the people that do watch Days of Our Lives too. The character named Steve on Days of Our Lives has been playing that character for 40 years. I don't know if we can consider that 40 years straight, because he was on General Hospital, and he seemed like he played more of an iconic role on Days. And part of me is like, well, what made him go to General Hospital? I mean, he clearly went back to Days, but what made him go to General Hospital? And then what made him go back to Days? Like, why would you leave an iconic role like Steve Johnson to play some cast on that I can't even remember who he played, just to go back to playing the iconic role again? I don't get it. I only bring it up because it's his 40th anniversary. I'm just curious about that. Anyway, if anybody knows more information, write in the comment section below. With that being said, I'm going to go. 23 minutes. That's just awesome. That's exactly the time that I didn't want to go too far.